What's up, guys? When I think about Vanderbilt baseball, I think to myself, I constantly use words like elite, powerhouse, and the word dynasty seems to be coming up a lot. Today's guest is a two-time college World Series national championship, currently entering his 23rd year at the helm for the Vandy Boys. It is an absolute honor to welcome the legendary Tim Corbin, head coach of the Vanderbilt Commodores. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ian. Thank you for the words, and I appreciate the compliment. It's very nice.
Absolutely, Coach. It is an absolute honor to have you here. Obviously, the success that you guys have had at your program and what you've been able to accomplish, in those entering the 23rd year at the helm has been absolutely incredible, man. I'd love to ask you some questions about your journey, how you got to where you're at, having the success that you're having. I'd love to ask you some more questions about your team and about that said dynasty, as I mentioned there at the open, and then I'd like to end with some words of insight and just here at the Nine Hole Podcast, I'm trying to give information and insight to the next generation of nine hole hitters like myself who would one day love to play for a program like yours, man. So I'd love to kind of peel back the onion a little bit, ask you some questions about your journey. Man, coming up, has there been a specific instance that you can remember that made you fall in love with the game?
I think just it had something to do with my dad. It had something to do with turning the antenna ears a certain way, which no one would know today, but just to be able to watch the Red Sox and uh, see those teams back in the late '60s, early '70s. I think being a New Hampshire, New England resident, you're always intrigued by the seasonal sports, seasonal teams. So it was Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, and Celtics in that order. But I was always a huge Red Sox fan. We had a major league umpire that summered in Wolfboro, or wintered in Wolfboro, so I got to know him. But I think it was just always the attraction of someday playing for the Red Sox, especially when you're a young kid that loves the game.
Love that. That's fantastic. Obviously, baseball is rooted in the culture of growing up, man. How I was raised was kind of in the game as well. That's kind of how I fell in love with it. My old man introduced me to it. That's awesome to hear. That fires me up, man. So what kind of what kind of inspired you to pursue a career in coaching? And did you have these ideas of the type of success that you were going to have at this late in stage in your career?
No, I can't say that, Ian. I think what inspired me more was I just wanted to be a teacher. I know going through elementary school, I think when you're in front of people that you really admire. And I admired my second grade teacher. I admired my sixth grade teacher. I just admired their effect on kids. And I think even at a young age, I could feel their wisdom. And I felt at that point in time, I knew I was going to be a teacher early. I mean, I started a street hockey league when I was 12 years old in my neighborhood. So I just felt like I wanted to organize, I wanted to teach, I wanted to be around sports. So I think as I got older, the baseball piece and teaching and coaching piece came together. But I think when people say, "Did you know what you wanted to be when you were growing up?" I can actually say I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I did. And I think that's what I'm doing still today. I think teachers can coach. I don't know if all coaches can teach, but I really enjoyed the teaching realm. And so I think that's really what led me to baseball.
What's going on, everybody? We as baseball players, we as athletes, we all have something in common that we all share with one another. At some point, our careers are going to come to an end, whether we play 15 years in the league or whether we don't make it past high school or college. This is called the Money Playbook. So, this teaches financial concepts for student athletes, for professional athletes. It's got a bunch of financial concepts in there that I didn't learn until I was done playing. Go on over to Amazon and check it out. It's called the Money Playbook. It's written by Mark Tepper, who is an NFLPA registered investment advisor. So he has worked with a plethora of professional athletes. Like I said, go to Amazon. We'll leave the link in the bio and the description of this episode. It's a must-have. Check it out. Let me know what you think. So you've experienced 42 years of coaching. So you are entering your 43rd season coaching college baseball, which is absolutely incredible. Obviously players, when they try to maximize their careers, get to play in Major League Baseball, they want to try to have longevity. They want to get there. They want to stay there. And obviously, in kind of the way that college baseball is evolving today, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving around. Obviously, with the transfer portal, we'll touch on that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we don't necessarily see longevity, and when we do, it's powerful. And that's how these dynasties, in my opinion, are built. What has been the secret to your longevity that you would say throughout your coaching career?
I think not losing your passion. I think older coaches sometimes can get worn down by the processes of everyday teaching and coaching. And as time goes on, the length of time kind of wears them down to where they become maybe less diligent in their expectations and their standards and what they ask for. And I think the thing that I've enjoyed is even with the nuances of the portal and NIL and all these things, the games remain the same. The game hasn't changed. And actually, and I think some people would maybe refute this, but I don't think kids have changed either. What's changed is the environment around them, but kids are naturally the same. They're driven by their own passions. They want to have fun. They want to be successful, and they want to be in an environment that creates some organization and I would say discipline. I think we all want discipline. We don't always say that we want discipline, but I think in a lot of ways we're guided by it because we know what it can do for us. So I'm driven by that. I'm driven by young kids. I enjoy being around them. I enjoy the like this part of the year, the fall, where you can get to learn them and you get to train with them and start to develop a sense of humor with them. So I just think it's the relationship piece that probably remains the most important thing for me personally.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Obviously, when we see longevity, we have that tied to success in any facet of this game, right? The players that play for a long time have success. They add value to their team. Obviously, with success, comes the blessings of success, right? You were one of, and still are, one of college baseball's highest paid coaches. Does that add any type of pressure onto what you're doing? Does that add any type of pressure onto coming up with results? I know as guys go into contract years in the big leagues, or if they're going into their minor league free agent years in baseball, as I've experienced a couple times, it's like, okay, there's an added pressure here that I need to do well. I need to show up this year. Is that something that ever really crossed your mind, or has it just been business as usual?
Uh, I wouldn't say business as usual, but I don't think that element has really ever driven me, nor I've spent much time thinking about it. I mean, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So, it's like money really has never been a driving force in anything I did. I mean, the fact that I'm a college coach and you get paid for it is still hard to believe sometimes. It's a lifestyle. It's not a job, and I think that's the best thing about it is it's created a nice lifestyle for myself, our assistant coaches, my wife. My wife and I get to do this together. We enjoy doing it together. We enjoy being an extension of the parents of the kids that are here. And I think I try to keep it really simple. I mean, we live a half a mile away. I don't drive a car. So life is very simple in the middle of a city. And I try to keep everything around me, even the kids, try to keep it simple for them too, because I know there's a lot of distractions in their life. So I never really get enamored with what we have to do. It's more about what we want to do and how can we better the program in the time that we're here. Because at the end of it, we just want to be an extension of Vanderbilt University, and how can we add to the legacy of the university itself through a sport and keeping it that way. I never really get pulled away from the center point of why I'm here and what the most important thing is, and that's the development of the kids.
Yep. The development of the kids being the most important thing, I think is amazing. Obviously, there have been so many questions surrounding, what comes first. Is it development, or is it necessarily opportunities? Is it NIL money? There's been a whole bunch of questions surrounding the intentions of these young kids and what is really important to them. Right. Obviously, there can be some NIL money flashed in front of them to kind of deter them from an opportunity to maybe develop or play their freshman year. Just thinking about where I came from in college baseball and not having any of that stuff, I can't even really wrap my head around the demands of what being a top tier Division I college baseball players like. So that's incredible. In your 42 years of coaching, what has been the most difficult thing about being Tim Corbin?
I don't know, Ian. I don't know if I'd call anything difficult. I mean, I think starting a program at Presbyterian was a challenge. Learning how to recruit at the Division I level my first year at Clemson was a challenge. Uh, not starting, but trying to move a program forward here at Vanderbilt in 2002 was a challenge. Those were all challenges that brought upon, I'm sure, difficult days. I still remember them, but also some beautiful moments. I think the challenges for being inside of a program and coaching for a long period of time is watching challenging things happen to kids. I think when it's all over, it's losing players in life. It's when you get attached to these kids and things don't work out or things break down or life changes. I think that becomes the most difficult thing. But I've never equated difficulty with losing. I've never equated difficulty with the challenge of NIL or the transfer portal. I mean, it's just a new part of what we do, and it's a system, that was put in by adults. It wasn't the kids. The kids didn't ask for that. They're having to maneuver through it. So I think with every challenge along the way, I think the difficult part is just being able to reclaim your passion and desire to do the things that are most important. And I do, and I feel thankful for that. I'm not I'm a Christian, but I spend all of my time here at the field. I don't do any other things, besides, baseball and my relationships with the players. It's all tied up in them. So I think the difficulty of what I do, I probably don't think of it in that manner either. I just try to forge ahead and really enjoy what I'm doing, especially the older I get too. And I think age in a lot of ways creates a unique perspective on what you're doing. And rather than squeeze the bird, so to speak, it's almost like holding it loosely enough to where it can move, but not holding it so tight that you kill it. And I think with a program, that's how I feel about our kids.
Yeah, everything you're saying, I love it. I love that. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. So obviously, in 2002, when you took over the program, you tried to move it forward. There could have been some uncertainty around that time. There's difficulties. How do you get through a tough time like that? Are there any ideas in the back of your mind, like, hey, this might not necessarily work out, and how do you overcome that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's just the recovery. I mean, I think it's everyday recovery. It's in 2002, during the course of the fall, we started out with 39 people. By the time the season started, we only had 26 and we only had 8 pitchers. And getting to an SEC tournament was kind of the vision of the program then, because Vanderbilt hadn't been to an SEC tournament in 15 years. So that was kind of the goal. And so we just kind of visualized doing it on the very last day. And we were very fortunate to win and walk off fashion to go to the SEC tournament for the first time. I mentioned that story just because it was a vision. It was what we tried to do. It was a tough year because we were basically 500, but it also leapfrogged us into the summer where the confidence from the group sent a bunch of guys off to the Cape Cod League during the course of the summer. They became Cape League All-Stars. And then the very next year in 2004, which would be our second year, here we are in Austin, Texas, 2 games away from going to Omaha. So that might have been a quick track, but at the same time, what it did is it gave our program a lot of confidence, and it gave the kids some confidence too. And it dignified the hard work that we were putting in and the commitment to what you're doing. Because at the end of it, what we needed to learn in the early stages is what real commitment looked like and what it wasn't. And I think once you started to get guys that were committed to what they were doing, then we started to move. And we had Eric Bakich on staff there, who's now the head coach at Clemson. Mike Holder was on staff then, and he's now the head coach at USC Aiken. The pitching coach was Derek Johnson. He's now the pitching coach at the Cincinnati Reds. And there's a picture on my wall of the celebration when we won that final game to go to the SEC tournament. And there's 4 Major League Baseball executives in that pile. So it was almost like we developed a passion for the game, and maybe that one moment stimulated a lot of different mindsets to where they started taking baseball and actually developed their own lifestyle with it.
Beautiful. Yes, that's beautiful right there, man. Makes a ton of sense to me. So obviously, in order to continue pumping out successful years, you need to attract top tier talent. You want to make sure that you are bringing in top tier baseball players in order to, keep forging a new path forward, keep building on the legacy, keep building the program. So whether it is high school players coming in, whether it is transfer players, graduate players, whatever it is, how do you attract the top tier talent? What are you looking for? And what are red flags?
Well, I think a fit. I think for the fit for the university, I mean, there's a private school education to be had here. So the guys are using their baseball skill sets to attract a Vanderbilt education. So you certainly want kids who are very competitive academically. I think that's number one. Number two, someone who is certainly team oriented. I mean, I think you can gain a lot by how an individual handles his mother and father and his respect for his mother and father and how he respects the people around him. And certainly when you find people like that that have a tremendous amount of gratitude and respect for their peers and for their parents, their life team members, then I think it's a kid that you can take a chance on. And those are the people that that have those type of fibers that we want to be around. I didn't mention the skill sets because, I think what stands out is, certainly they have to be skilled. They have to be skilled baseball players. But when you start breaking down and peeling the onion to see what's inside of a young person, I think it's more about work ethic, someone who really, really loves the game. And there are people that really want to be on the baseball field all the time that are still really, really good students. I mean, they've made them here at Vanderbilt. We've put a lot of guys in the big leagues, and those big leaguers have been very good students too. So I think someone that just sees the advantage of developing their mind along with their baseball skills, and someone who wants a degree. I mean, I think someone who wants a degree understands that baseball is not going to last forever. In their window of time, it's probably going to be a short window of time in relationship to the rest of their life. So someone that has enough understanding of what life could potentially look like when baseball is done and understand that this degree would certainly come to value them. So it's more about that. The red flags, I think, I think when parents can't release the opportunity to their child, and they answer a lot of the questions, they kind of intercede with what the kid's doing. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know, that's sometimes a red flag to me, just because parents that will allow their child just to not do it themselves, but it's yours. We'll support you, but this is yours. You speak up for yourself. You advocate for yourself. You handle your own issues. You handle whether or not you're good enough to play or not. I think when we as parents give our kids the car keys to allow them to drive the car of life and maneuver, make decisions and choices because of what we've done as parents, I think that's when you're giving your kid a tremendous gift and opportunity. I think when we get in their way and we start interceding in what they're doing, we ask the questions, we want to know the whys, that's when we start taking it away from our kids. So I think for me, it's someone that certainly is, I always tell our guys, someone who loves their parents more, but depends on them less. Because when that happens, you're basically telling your parents, hey, you did a hell of a job raising me. You did the best job raising me. Now you're leaving me to figure this out, and I appreciate that. And I think that's when you start to see kids really grow inside of life, but certainly in the game of baseball too.
Amen. Amen. So you obviously you touched on discipline is a big part of how you are able to bring in these young men from all walks of life and mold them into a Vanderbilt baseball player. They leave a better man. They leave a better human being. I've had the pleasure of sharing a locker room in a professional setting with a Vanderbilt baseball player or two, and they were different. They were different how they prepared, how they went about their business. They were extremely professional, and I think that says a lot about you and what you were building over there. Man, I can go online and I can look up how you guys stand for the national anthem and how in unison you guys are. It's absolutely incredible. Obviously, it looks like discipline is a key part of what you are teaching your program around. Would you say that is that's a huge part of the team's success? Like what other kind of insights do you have on the secrets to the success, if you will?
Well, I mean, I think, and sometimes my wife gets after me sometimes when I speak, and she goes, there, our program is disciplined, but at the same time, these kids have fun. These kids are, they're, I think the thing that you can say about our program is it's organized. There's some structure to it, but yet the structure doesn't overcome the kid. The kids have a lot of say so in this program. The kids have a lot of operating power in this program, and I think that's where it's kind of a blend of, yeah, it's disciplined, but only because when you do what you do it better when you do it for other people outside of yourself. But also when you do what you do, if you're going to do it right. Don't do it in a way that takes away from your personality or what our program is all about. And I think that's really what it is. It's more about the standards of a program rather than the rules, because we don't have rules. I mean, rules are for people who can't follow directions. Standards are for people that can aspire to do special things. And we don't have curfews, but yet we're not sleeping with one eye open. It's almost like there's a way to handle business. There's a way to be professional, and you're guided by the standards of the program. If everyone has a high care level for what they do, then they're going to manage their own space in a professional and mature way. I think it's the parent's job, the coach's job, to teach what that looks like, to kind of teach what it looks like in an organized way to an 18, 19, 20-year-old person. Because at the end of this, everything that you can teach by the way of baseball is basically a precursor to them being a parent, to them being a father. Because if you're teaching leadership techniques that matter, then leadership techniques matter most when they're in charge of another human being or they're supporting their teammate, their wife. So I just look at this as another way to teach a lot of life lessons that, not that we have all the answers, but at the same time, I think we can help guide them. And when you've been in the game for 43 years and you've taught for 43 years, I think there's a lot of wisdom that can be passed along, especially when you've seen a lot of things, you've seen a lot of players, and you've seen it done well, and then you've seen it maybe not done as well. And I think that's where you can learn, and I think that's where you can help the kids the most.
No kidding. Guided by the standards of the program, teaching the game for 43 years. How do you develop and have so much success? I love that answer right there. And, since you've taken over the program, 55 All-Americans, 30 MLB appearances since 2003. That's absolutely incredible. Not just bringing players in that are top tier players, but also developing them. Man, that's an incredible testament to you and your hard work and what you've been able to build out there in Nashville. It's gorgeous. Um, as of right now, so the term dynasty can be used in a multitude of different ways, but obviously a dynasty in a sports program is a program that has a tremendous amount of success, reoccurring success. Would you say that, in your opinion, do you think the Vandy Boys are at that level, a dynasty level, in your opinion?
I think what we do, we have a program that's consistent. I think we just offer a program where the environment, the people in place are very consistent, and I think that's what it gets to. I think winning is just an outcome of your preparation, how you show up every day, how you join forces, the relationships within your team. I think you go to any championship team, and you ask the coach about what was the driving force with that particular team, And I think in most cases they would say they got along really well. They enjoyed one another. They enjoyed doing something for one another. And I think when your program is that, when your program is that every single day and every single year, and certain years it's done better in the record books than others. I don't know, what dynasty could be, but I do know that we're consistent. We're in the mix every year in terms of what it looks like from a conference standpoint in what is a very difficult conference. And we've been able to produce the outcomes for kids that they want, which is playing baseball beyond Vanderbilt. So I feel like we offer a lot of different things, but we offer a lifestyle to a young man where they can really take off as a student athlete and potentially explore baseball at a higher level once they leave here. And at least while they're here, enjoy the relationships while being able to win a few games.
Yeah, playing top tier baseball, surrounded by top tier talent. Um, I love that. So, as I alluded to, 55 All Americans and 30 MLB appearances since 2003. That is incredible. So, you've been in the locker room, you've coached some of the best baseball players in the country, in the world, at the collegiate level, and then have gone on to be one of the best in the world at the professional level. So, in your opinion, in your experience, what do the best players do differently than the rest?
They live their life differently. I do. They get up. They're organized with their day. They When they get to the ball field, they know exactly what they're going to do. I use the comparison of director and actor a lot when I talk about players because I think there are a lot of players that will act out what the coach wants them to do. They certainly will try, there's certainly effort, they certainly will play well. But when the setting is over and the organization's over, then the actor folds into the rest of life. I think the best ones, they direct themselves. They love coaching, they love being led, but at the same time, the driving force is them. They look at themselves as the motor of what's going to happen. There's no fear of competition. The great ones don't care if they're competing against another person for a position. They don't care if you've brought in two other people at that position. They look at it and go, "That's my job. I'm going to win it." Internally, they don't necessarily say that, but they feel that way. And then there's just a special way about them. Once competition hits, it's almost like their level of play and their mindset seems to grow even more. They're alert, they're focused, um, they're enjoyable to be around because most of them are very low maintenance. They don't ask a lot of questions, they don't have a lot of wants except to be good, and they want your support, but at the same time they don't need your support. They're going to move in the manner that they are. But I think when you have the great ones, it's just facilitating them. It's giving them all the resources they need in to be as good as they possibly can. And then you certainly want to guide them because you can certainly help them with information. But at the same time, I think it's standing right next to them. It's not standing in front of them. It's not leading them. It's more about standing next to them and just allowing them the space to grow. But they're all driven. The best ones are very driven. It doesn't matter what time you would call a workout. They're already going to be working out before you call that workout.
It's awesome. That's awesome. And having to uh, kind of allow them to figure it out, not figure it out, but guide them, right? Stand next to them,
Yeah.
not in front of them. I love that. Makes a ton of sense. I always wondered about that. It's like, okay, being a head coach at any level is obviously going to come with its challenges, but how do you guide um, and command the respect of the top baseball players in the country at that time, all in one roof? I always thought that was incredible how you were able to do it. I definitely wanted to ask. Love that. Again, we're here with legendary Coach Tim Corbin. Coach, I got a couple more questions for you. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for your time. You had alluded to it earlier. In the recording where it's like the older you get, the more you teach this game, the longer you're in this game, the more you don't take it for granted. You count your blessings, right? Every day is a blessing If you could go back and give yourself 20-year-old self some advice, knowing what you know now, what would be the advice and why?
I think patience. I just think when you're a younger coach, you want something right now, and you feel like I think oftentimes as a young coach, you probably have a tendency, especially if you're aggressive, is to get in the way of an athlete rather than remove yourself, rather than maybe send a message that really won't have any significance to a kid. I think along the way, what you learn is to speak less and keep up your demands of what you want from the group, but empower the kids to take on the responsibility of seeking those same demands. I've always correlated it with when you're a young kid and your parents have always driven the car and navigated the trip to wherever you're going with your family, and it's almost like you get to a point as a older kid where you grab the keys from your mom and dad and say, okay, I want you guys to get in the back seat. I want you guys to enjoy this. I'm gonna manage the ride. I'm gonna manage the trip. And it's when your parents look at you and they go, yes, go ahead. It's because they trust you. They know that your heart's in it. They know that you're calculated. They know you're organized, and they know that you're going to protect them. And I think when you have teams like that, it's so many times as a coach, you feel yourself just giving the keys away to your team. It's like 2019, it was almost like in the middle of March, you could say, hey, this is theirs. This is theirs. It's not like you're pulling yourself away from it, but you know that they're taking it and you want them to take it because when they take it, they've got their name on it. Their emotions are tied up in it because it's theirs. So you've empowered them to take it over. And I think those are the best teams is when you start to see your kids in motion really relish the fact that now they can take it. You've given them the environment to do it. Now they're pulling it from you. But I think, that all starts with, you mentioned managing really, really good players. There's a level of trust that has to exist with every really good player when he looks at a teacher and a coach. And that trust comes just from the standpoint of he cares about me first. And I learned that as a step parent too. When I met Maggie, the girls were 3 and 6. And I think if I came into the home and said, okay, I'm the new parent in town, they would have looked at me and said, you know what? We were really good without you. We don't need you in order to have this great family. And I think coaching's a lot like that. It's like, you got to show them that you care about them first as people, and it's not transactional. And regardless of their skill set, you still care about them as people. Once they start to understand that, then there's a trust that forms between the student, a coach, and the student. And that's where you have a relationship. Once you have the relationship, you can get to that point that I was talking about, Ian, there. We have teams that say, we got such a good relationship, I would protect him. I would take a bullet for him, or he'd take a bullet for me. And because of that, you start doing things that are filled with emotion because there's been a relationship that has been formed in over time. And I think that's really where you start to get special teams because that bond becomes very, very strong. And the skill sets within the team are exponentially greater because of that. And that's where special things start to happen.
Yeah. So you have mentioned your wife once or twice since we've been on here. Obviously,
Yeah.
it seems as though family is a pillar. Not just in your team and their game, but in your life as well.
Right.
How long have you been with Maggie, and is she the team mom?
Well, I don't know if she would want you to say that, but I think we're kind of team parents. I mean, we're
Team parent.
extensions of everyone's parents. I've been with Maggie, 32 years now. So kind of a long time. But it's my life teammate. And I think there were times when, especially when the girls got older and they left the home, where Maggie could have done something else. She has a master's degree and could have gone into business. But, I remember her asking me what should be my next step. And I said, you can do anything that you want to, because you're welcome to. But at the same time, if we do this together, it might be more fulfilling for both of us. And not that she crosses the boundaries of staff. She doesn't. She's got a good feel and she's got good awareness. But at the same time, she's here. I mean, she doesn't miss a practice. She doesn't miss a classroom. She doesn't miss a game.
It's awesome.
And I know that the kids know that, and she also the kids also know that she is also going to protect them, even when it comes from me. If there's she always is looking out for their best, but also at the same time respects the program that we have for them, so that we can start to generate the type of skills that they're looking for as people. So we're lucky. We're just lucky that we can do this together. It's not common, I know, and I'm not bragging about it. It's just the thing that we do. It doesn't mean it's the right way to do it in any other program, but we found a way to do it that feels good for us and feels good for the school. Because certainly, if the school didn't like it, they would say something. But as I said, she didn't cross boundaries. I mean, she's got a good way about her, and I know the kids appreciate it.
That's awesome, Coach. Living the dream, man. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Last question I got for you. So you are coaching some of the best baseball players in the world, and you are developing them and turning them into further insane athletes and just top tier men, character wise, discipline wise, success wise. Um, are there any books you could recommend that you would recommend to your players, maybe to help them out in the development or getting inspired? What do you got?
Well, I think when it when it comes to the management of the game of baseball for a young kid, I've always pointed towards the mental game of baseball books by Ken Ravizza. I thought Ken Ravizza, he was a very good friend. I loved him. I thought he had such a unique way of teaching the mental game. And he's written two different books on the game of baseball, the mental skills of baseball. I would recommend those highly for any young player that is in search of those skills. Harvey Dorfman was also a friend of ours and helped our daughter when she was playing tennis here. He has since passed too. He's written a mental skills book that Harvey was tremendous to. And when I looked at Ken and Harvey, Ian, I always looked at them as grandfatherly figures. They were very believable and they were very trustworthy because you knew that they weren't just trying to spew information. What came out of their mouth was more wisdom than information. So I thought that was very beneficial. The other book that I've really enjoyed is The Inner Game of Tennis. And Maggie,
Yeah.
who was an All-American tennis player, told me about that book when we first met. And I thought it was so applicable to baseball that we've read that several times. And when I think of team building books, James Kerr book Legacy is one of the about the All Blacks rugby. I still to this day I could read that over and over and over, and I could listen to it over and over. I just think it's a tremendous book about building teams, unselfish people, and you can see why the All Blacks had. You talked about dynasties. When you think about dynasties, whether it's football or any sport, they certainly had one. But you can see it was a culture. It was a culture over time that it kind of maintained itself over time too. So I think when I think about books, those are probably the books that I probably put at the top of the food chain.
Awesome. Awesome, Coach. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for letting me run you through the gauntlet of questions. I've kept you way too long. That's Tim Corbin, everybody. Coach, thank you so much for your time, man. We're looking forward to the continued success this year.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate your time as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will catch you back here again next time.